Hey everyone, welcome back to our next episode of Beyond the Beeps. If you've been listening along with us, or maybe this is your first time, we are bringing together medical professionals, parents, NICU professionals, the community to improve the experience of NICU families and NICU babies in the neonatal intensive care unit. That's what NICU stands for, in case that's new to you. Today, we have a very, very special guest with us, Keira Sorrells, who was on our short list when we created this podcast nearly 2 years ago, because she is the founder of the NICU Parent Network. And that is the mothership of the NICU parent organizations in the United States. And she has been leading this movement to elevate the NICU parent leader as a professional in the maternal infant health space. And after giving birth to her own triplets at just 25 weeks and 5 days gestation, she lost one of her daughters at 14 months old. Kira was propelled into the maternal infant health world out of a deep seated desire to ensure that no parent experiences the trauma of preterm birth or loss alone. Together with a dedicated team of NICU parent leaders, Kira has grown the NICU Parent Network to be a sought after resource, a collaborative partner for providers, researchers, industry, and other stakeholders in this niche of healthcare, which is everybody who's out there listening today. These are our people. Kira believes that parents are the key stakeholders and the key informants in maternal infant health, and that nowhere else in healthcare is this more important than in matters related to neonates, newborns, a patient population that cannot speak for itself. Kira is passionate about strengthening the NICU parent leader community so that every aspect of maternal infant health will be improved through informing product development, research protocols, standards of care, and educating families, communities, and providers, resulting in families who thrive. Thriving, that's something we talk about at ICBB all the time. Ms. Sorrell's commitment to authentic leadership and collaboration has successfully brought over 40 NICU support organization leaders together as they have worked to establish a unified representation for NICU parents. This past summer, I had the great opportunity to work with and for the NICU Parent Network under Kira's leadership at Hill Day in Washington, D.C., where we were working to advocate for our NICU families and getting them the NICU Babies Bill of Rights. Welcome, Keira Sorrells.
Thank you so much for having me, Leah. It's so great to be here.
Yes, it is truly an honor for us and for everybody out there listening, because you um, have truly been in a position to help um, be the wind at the back of our organizations, and also to be our voice when we needed a gathering force to go up in advocacy, or even in putting us together with other organizations. So a deep, deep gratitude to you and all of the work that you've done so far.
Thank you, Leah.
And I say so far because we don't want you to give up or stop. I mean, you could do other things, but we want you to
Right.
stay with us for a while.
Planning on it, at least for right now.
That's good. That's good. So, because we are parents here, and NICU parents specifically, tell me a little bit about what brought your babies to the NICU.
So I had a high risk pregnancy from the very beginning, experienced a couple of years of infertility, and ended up with a quintuplet pregnancy. And we did make the very difficult decision to reduce the pregnancy to triplets. That would be a whole nother episode to talk about that and unpack that, but it was, one of the most difficult decisions, we've ever had to make, and I ended up, developing preeclampsia, so the triplets were delivered at 25 weeks, 5 days. Um, they spent let's see, Avery and Lily were in the NICU for 4 months, and then Zoe was there for 9.5 months. Um It was I mean, like anybody who's been in the NICU, life-changing, life-altering, um, just unbelievably stressful and traumatic.
Yeah. You shared with us, something on Hill Day, which I spoke about before, when we were meeting with several, um, senators and particularly representatives, and a lot of, community organizers. You shared, to me, it was a love letter, but I know it was, sort of your story. Would you mind sharing that with us here?
Yeah, sure. So there was a day in February. I remember it was very sunny and unseasonably warm. And I was standing in the middle of a chapel just by myself. And I remember the way the rays of the sun kind of filtered through the windows and bounced off the crystal drops from the chandeliers above my head. And I was just sitting there, looking around, and I didn't even hear the chapel director open the door and didn't notice that he was walking towards me until he met me near the altar. And he just gave me a very warm smile. He placed one hand on my shoulder and he handed me a container about the size of a pint of milk, that big. And it was the urn that held the ashes of my 14-month-old daughter, Zoe. And this was the day of her memorial service. Her life was far too short, and it began in a way that I wish no child ever had to enter the world. And when we left the NICU, I thought we had left the worst behind us. And as I had shared just a minute ago, all three of my girls, Avery, Lily, and Zoe, were born at 25 weeks, 5 days. And Zoe was by far the sickest of the three of them. I mean, from day one, it took them over 5 hours just to stabilize her after birth. She was on the ventilator for 2.5 months. She was 2 months old before I could hold her. And she was there in the NICU for 291 days. And all of our babies, all three of them, came home with some sort of medical equipment. Um, it- just like I'm sure many who are listening today, we had a mini NICU set up in the living room we had 3 feeding pumps, we had an oxygen concentrator, we had 3 apnea monitors, a blood pressure monitor, we had hearing aids for Zoe. But, they were still they were babies, they smiled, they laughed, they rolled around on the floor, they played steal the passy. Lily usually had 2 in her mouth and 1 on each pointer finger. And, we thought, like I said, we thought the worst was behind us, that we were going to have this life as a family. It might not have looked the way that we had dreamed it would look when we first started to talk about having a family. But something that was really difficult at first was that I didn't feel connected to any of my babies right away. I know now that that is a trauma response to their unexpected birth, the emergency C-section. And, I remember very distinctly after they were born, I wouldn't go see them. It was 2 days before I saw them because I had made up some sort of story in my mind that I needed to not have any IVs or anything connected to me before I could go see them. Nobody said that to me. We all know that you can very, very well go visit your babies with all kinds of things connected to you. Um, but that's what I told myself. Um, Over those 9.5 months that we were there, 4 months with Avery and Lily, we had some of the best NICU nurses I could ever have hoped for. They were gentle, they were patient with us, they guided us, um, and I did begin to feel connected to my children. That love that we have for our children finally started to grow, and it was in the most unnatural places, right? I mean, the NICU is not a normal place to become a parent. And I think one of the most important things, the reason that I think we ended up having a good NICU experience is because our NICU team, they understood what family-centered care was. They understood the importance of information sharing, participation, respect, dignity, collaboration, and they didn't just talk about it, they lived it out. They did that in practice. I think something that folks that aren't familiar with the NICU, probably have a hard time understanding is as NICU parents, we're completely stripped of any natural parenting instincts that we may have. I ended up having a full-term baby, Mia, many years later. And so having those 2 experiences now, I really can see just how much I missed, um, with Avery and Lily and Zoe. In the NICU, you can't just scoop your babies up when they cry. It takes a nurse and a respiratory therapist at the very least, especially if they're intubated, um, to place them on your chest for kangaroo care. You can't just rock them in the privacy of your own home. Sometimes you've got to pull a thin curtain around while other parents are around you with their babies. Another thing that was really kind of eye-opening for me having had Mia was how traumatic feeding my triplets was. It was not a bonding experience at all. It was to us, it was a life or death task that had to be completed 8 times a day. And it was in these moments, not being able to pick them up whenever I wanted to, feeling like a failure when one of my babies just didn't have the stamina to finish their bottle. Um, I wondered if I could even call myself a mother. And it took quite some time for me to feel confident in that I was a mom. I remember at one point, I think it was about 5 months into Zoe's NICU stay, we were in a birthing hospital and had to transfer across the street, to the children's hospital because Zoe had to get a G-tube placed and had to get molds made for her hearing aids. And so, I rode in the ambulance and did the whole transfer thing, and we're getting into the NICU at the children's hospital, and the transfer nurse is, reporting out to the admitting nurse, and she kept getting things wrong. And so I kept going, correcting her and saying, "Well, no, this is the medication she's on. Well, no, this is the procedure that she's having." I mean, there were so many things I was correcting, and it was in that moment that I felt like I was Zoe's mom. But isn't that bizarre? That being able to recall all of her medical needs is what made me feel like her mom. Um, I was glad that we were only there for a few days and then we got to go back to our home NICU, I would say, because that is where, the NICU team helped me feel like a mother in a more, I guess, natural sense, where my husband and I became parents. And it was even you know, within the walls of the NICU that we saw their personalities bloom. Um, Avery has always been an observer, takes everything in, even as a small little baby, just was always looking very introspective. And Lily, who still is my dreamer, um, always curious and expressive, sometimes lost in her own world. And Zoe just emerged with this huge smile and kind of a husky laugh because she had, paralyzed vocal cord, and it was so fascinating to see these tiny babies, that were born so early to have these personalities, and the NICU staff there really supported us as parents. They truly cared about our babies and cared about us connecting with our babies because they understood that the NICU, however long it was still a very short time in comparison to their entire lives, right? But unfortunately, our experiences weren't always so supportive. And the day that Zoe died was a complete shock. It was not anything that we were expecting. She had recovered from the flu and pneumonia the week before. And then after a day and a half home after that rehospitalization, we had to rush her to the hospital in respiratory distress. I remember we had an oxygen tank and, the highest you could turn it up to was 4 liters, and it was at 4 liters, and we still had 30 minutes to get to the hospital. Um, she did stabilize, and we got kind of settled in the PICU, thinking, "Okay, here we go, another hospital stay." Not uncommon for medically complex babies like her. And in the middle of the night, she started to decline, and we were asked to wait in the waiting room while they intubated her. And we sat in that waiting room for 3 hours alone. I just remember, just how hard the chairs were. They were these plastic chairs. Nobody came to update us. No one brought us a coffee or a blanket. I would buzz the nurse's station, and they would just say, "They're still working on her." Now, having been in the NICU for as long as we were, I knew that intubations and extubations, it should not take 3 hours to intubate her. And I just remember, when we left her, she was on BiPAP. And of course, they were going to intubate her and put her on the ventilator. And I remember hearing something really big and clunky, kind of like coming down the hallway. And I saw an oscillator and a tank of nitric being wheeled into the PICU by the respiratory therapist. And I just knew it was her. It was for her.
Hmm.
Um, so Zoe died at 9 a.m. that Saturday morning. It was almost exactly 24 hours from the time that we walked into the ER doors, and that was after coding in front of us. This was the second time that we watched them do chest compressions on our one-year-old little baby, and the doctor just asked, "Do you want us to keep working or do you wanna hold her?" We didn't step out into a conference room. Without discussion, my husband and I both just said, "We wanna hold her." She had had enough, and we had to let her go. Um What I would learn a few weeks later was that during those 3 hours that we were in the NICU, Zoe coded 7 times, and we were never given the opportunity to tell them to stop. I'm don't claim to be, I am not a healthcare professional. Maybe 3 hours goes by in a blink when you're trying to save a child, but we had been forgotten, and I think that that's one of the most, um egregious things that could have happened was that we were stripped of the agency to make a decision for our child. So that's, really what led me to where I am today. Um, just I think if Zoe was still alive, I would not be doing this. I'd be too busy. Um, but it was just that, it was that experience. It was her death. And then later realizing that our experience in the NICU is not what a lot of other families experience, in terms of the support and the guidance and the coaching that we receive from our NICU team. And so that's why, we developed the NICU Babies Bill of Rights.
Yeah. Kara, I can't thank you enough for sharing this. Everybody out there who's listening, I've heard this before. Um, and I tried my best to stay silent while you were reading it. Um, because it is such a powerful and honest and real and vulnerable thing to do. And, speaking up is something we hear a lot of our families feel bad about speaking up, or maybe they shouldn't, or who are they to speak up, or and lending your voice, especially yours. Um, I think it is one of the most powerful things that we can give. It's you showing up and showing your presence to all of our families who are there now. So I have deep gratitude for that as well. I think about when you said you were forgotten, and I think sometimes um, maybe not even forgotten, but selectively removed is something that also happens. I see a lot where it's like, oh, it'll be too much for them. Or I don't know how to talk to this parent about this. I don't know how to explain this. Or they'll be in the way. Um, I think it's something that I know I advocate highly for, being present for both birth and death in the NICU myself with other families. Um, it's been a gift to me to be able to be the parent support to say, this is what's happening. This is what's going on. Do you have any questions? Is there, help to manage the parents in the room? Because the doctors have to attend to the baby. The nurses are assisting that way. And without somebody there who can be the bridge between, parents either are forgotten about or forced out.
It's interesting that you say that about the bridge between because we in the middle of the night when we were, well, no, I guess it was after we had been brought back, I ended up calling, one of Zoe's neonatologists and just kinda told her what was happening, and she showed up. She had privileges at the children's hospital, so she showed up, and then, word spread because we were just across the street from where Zoe had spent 9.5 months, so she had developed a bit of a following with
Yes,
the
yes.
staff there, um, and the parent support, coordinator showed up as well because she also had privileges at the children's hospital, and that's exactly what they were, um 'cause the staff in that hospital, like you said, they're attending to the baby,
Yeah,
but Anne and Doctor Maynor were the ones that supported us and kinda helped us understand what was happening. It was the 2 of them that, um, said, "You can hold her as long as you want after she had passed. Would you like to give her a bath?" Um,
mm,
and, took my phone and started calling people to let them know what had happened, because we didn't know. We had
yeah,
not planned
no,
for this at all, and
yeah,
they really were that bridge.
yeah, yeah. I think it's and we're talking about it particularly here in death and grief, but so many components of the NICU. As you were the parents for your three baby, and for me, of course, but she was not in the NICU, thank goodness. Um, And it looked a little more administrative, right? Those first feelings that you said, I felt, when I was able to recount those things. And we've had other folks on our podcast before too who have saved their babies' lives because they knew what tube size to use, what medication was wrong or right or whatever. And
Yeah,
so, yeah, that does make you a very important part of the parenting. Um, and I think it's something that it, even in birth, which is for baby going to the NICU becomes traumatic, even if the pregnancy was rainbows and roses, which I talk about happens very rarely. But and even if the delivery, everything seemed okay until the moment, uh, then it becomes traumatic. So even if everything else was perfect, which almost happens almost never, but even if everything else was perfect, then you say your baby's not doing like, oh my God, we gotta go, we're calling a code. We gotta go to the NICU. Now it's now it's scary. And if nobody's there with the the birthing person, the mother, if that's who it is, saying, "This is what's going on and this is what's happening." And with the other parent, if there's somebody else there, a grandmother, a father, other mother, saying, "Let's go. You're coming with me with your baby to the NICU
Right,
because your baby
right.
needs you." And if the team isn't prepared to receive that baby with a parent, what happens? The parent gets pushed out. So even in like the birth, it can happen where the voice is removed or the support for the baby, and subsequently getting that parent bonded as quickly as possible. I don't know. Was your husband able to go with the triplets when they got admitted?
So he stayed with me. I remember he was with me in recovery.
Okay.
I was in recovery for a while, and I remember, the um, actually it was Dr. Vayner, who admitted Avery and Lily, and she came in and kind of gave us an update, but wasn't able to update us on Zoe because again she was not stabilized for quite a while. So I believe he no, I was on the mag wash, so
Oh, Lord.
it's
That feels terrible.
so, some memories are a little fuzzy, but, I believe he went and saw them once I got resettled back into a room, and
Sure.
then he went up there. But
Sure.
yeah,
Makes sense.
yeah.
So you mentioned the magwash, and something that to me is really impressive. I mean, how old are the girls now? Just
So
so everybody
Avery
gets a
and
perspective. Like they weren't just born last week, right? How
no,
how old are they
Avery
now?
and Lily are, they'll be 19 in December. So
Okay,
this was a while ago.
a few minutes ago. Okay, so because I think this is something when I hear you talking about this, how clear your memories are, and like even to the sensory, like what you saw, how the chairs felt. And I think in the moments in the NICU, it can feel like you remember nothing because everything's overwhelming. Like all of your senses are on high, and also there's too much coming in to manage it. And I hear a
Yeah.
lot of families talking about, oh my God, I can't remember anything, or, I hope I remember everything, or I hope I remember nothing. And I think this is all you mentioned part of the trauma response too, about, um, you know, you said about the connection with the babies at first, normalizing that is really key too. So I would just ask you two different questions at the same time, but how do you feel like your processing over time has been to get those memories back clear?
Mm. Well, I think that, um, that's a really good question. It has taken a lot of therapy for a lot of years.
Yeah.
Um, I was not in any sort of therapy until after Zoe died, and that's when I just fell into a very deep depression. It was, you know, major clinical depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, compounded by complex grief. Um, and there are there are those memories though that are just crystallized. You know, um, one of the things I think that really did help me at the time was when they were in the NICU. This is back when blogs were like the only thing we had because we didn't have social media. But I did start blogging about, the NICU, and then that turned into, the grief processing and, just that writing was really important, and I have it now to look back on as well, um, and then, of course, moving into, supporting other families and then moving into advocacy, I've had so many opportunities to share my story in very different settings. And I think something that I have learned that's really key in sharing those stories is not necessarily what happened to my babies, right? It's what happened to me. It's how I felt in those moments, especially when you're talking to, to healthcare professionals. I mean, they see babies get intubated all the time. They see babies develop neck. They see babies, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. They see all of that. And it used to be that I would run through, like, every medication they had been on, every, procedure they had, because I thought that's what was important. But what's important when we share our stories is to talk about the impact on us as parents. How does it really make you feel? And I think through preparing for sharing my story, whether it was, writing a blog or it was, presenting at a conference or a, physician journal club, um, I think there are definitely moments in preparing that just helps me to really think about and get, deep under the layers
Yeah,
to
yeah.
how it really has affected me. I will say that uh, it took a lot of not just therapy. I mean, I had grief counseling, I had a psychiatrist, I had a Christian counselor, I started running. I had a mom's group. It was all of these things that I built this support system up around me. Because I'll tell you, we I mean, it was just a couple weeks after Zoe died, and my husband and I were like, "Okay, we're gonna start a foundation. We're gonna keep her memory alive, right? We're gonna
Yep.
help other families." In hindsight, I wish that we hadn't had jumped into it so quickly because I think I used it as a way to avoid facing the pain.
Hmm.
I told myself, "Oh, I'm helping others and it's helping me."
Right.
But I wasn't really processing what we had experienced. And so
Yeah.
I'll tell you there was I mean, and I did that for many years. I mean,
Sure.
it was probably a good, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years, and I remember supporting a mom who had a 24-weeker. She lived for a month and passed away, and I went to the funeral, and I was in bed for 2 weeks after that. It
Yeah.
just it
Took
sent me
everything out of
back.
you. Mhm.
Absolutely. And that was really a wake-up call to me, and I was like, "Okay, I gotta step back from this." I mean, it's really when I stepped back from doing any kind of one-on-one support, period,
Mhm.
because I
Mhm.
realized that that was not helping me heal, and was I potentially doing some harm to these families that I thought I was helping?
Right.
Um, so, yeah, that was a big wake-up call.
Yeah, you talk about that a lot, and that's something, in NPN that you've always taken very special steps to, even when we have big meetings, small meetings, is to say, "Hey, we're all, wounded warriors," right? Everybody who's showing up has had an experience in the NICU, um, almost, or they're close, or they're providers who have had their
Right.
own ongoing trauma of tending to one baby who's going through a code and then turning to the next one who can't feed and trying to hold it all together. We're all in this world. And you've talked a lot about um, healing yourself, like you're talking about right now. Um, Tell me about the trifecta. You used that words with me before.
So I call it the trauma trifecta because we as leaders, whether you're a leader of a program, a leader of an entire organization, an author, an advocate, you are a leader, right?
Hmm.
And you have experienced something traumatic um, in having a NICU baby, having a loss. It doesn't matter, how long the NICU stay was or how short it was. When a pregnancy ends in a way that you don't expect it to, you know, that can feel traumatic for a lot of people. And then when we start these organizations and we start these programs, a lot of them are grounded in the importance of peer-to-peer support. So that means you're either staffing or you are managing volunteers that have also had this experience. And then you're going right back in, sometimes into the very hospital. where your own experience occurred, and you're supporting families who are in the midst of their own trauma, and that is significant. That is very different than if I was to go work for Girl Scouts of America, you know? I mean, it's different when the cause is so deeply rooted inside of you, and, I mean, it has to do with the most precious thing in your life, your children, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I think that, you know, like me, and I'm not saying that everybody does this by any stretch, but I think it's really, really important, particularly those that are just getting started with their organizations who are, just not significantly removed from their actual experience to do the healing work yourself. How many times does a peer support person tell a family, take care of yourself so that
Hmm.
you can show up for your baby 100%? Well, it's the same way for us as leaders. We've got to take care of ourselves so that we're showing up as our best selves for those that we're leading. And
Yeah.
then we're setting an example for our staff, our volunteers, who are the ones going back into to support the families one on one. So yeah, we talk a
Yeah.
lot about secondary trauma, vicarious trauma. You know, really um, saying it's okay to step back when you need to step
Mhm.
back.
Mhm.
That your family that you have now, you can't get time back with the family that you have right now. There will always be a need, unfortunately, for supporting NICU and bereaved families. And what's most important is you and your family.
Yeah. Yeah, 'cause we need all of us to move
Mhm.
this forward. We need everybody
Absolutely.
to feel well, essentially, in order to help the next family, in order to sustain this. We can't lose on fatigue, right? So it's absolutely, I mean, even when we bring in, for us as an ICU baby, when we bring in new parent mentors, uh, it takes a long time because we do, thankfully, I do our trainings and I've worked and studied from Mary Coughlin and the trauma informed professionals and multiple different things. And it is really crucial for folks who come back to have the opportunity to heal.
Yes. Yeah.
And certainly when they come back, especially if it was their own hospital, but even if it's not, it takes time before they really can be with a family. We have to come on the elevator, just yeah, the doors open, smell the
Right.
soap, hear the beeps, have to re-regulate our systems. But I think there's something very powerful that I've heard, and you saying it yourself, right? Being able to tell your story over and over again, from other people who are either, ambassador families or they're providers or they've just joined another NICU organization is being able to talk about it. Being able to talk about it and getting more comfortable talking about it helps the process. If whether it's writing when you're in the NICU, writing in your journal, to then speaking about it, to then supporting other people, hearing other people's stories, being able to show up for them. I think it does absolutely help the healing process. But what I'm hearing from you, and you tell me if I'm wrong, is we can't take it hastily.
No.
That this will
Yeah.
always be there, that motivation, and this happens for all of us. I don't know if ever you hear this other times. Towards the end of a stay in somebody's NICU, and sometimes even the first time we meet somebody, they're like, "I wanna join ICU Baby. I wanna do this." We're like,
Yeah.
"Whoa, yes, this is great. You just had a baby, so you are in, like, mama bear mode. So you have a ton of," air quoting for the people listening, "energy." It's not true energy, it's adrenaline, right? And you feel like because you have to kinda take over the world for a little while,
Right.
when you're carrying in fight or flight, or you're fighting for your baby's life. So it makes sense to me that you and your husband were like, "We're gonna fix it tomorrow," because you were running on that mama bear, daddy bear. We have to fix it now. We're in control of this. And so we always try to back people up and say, "Yes, yes. Right now, we're taking care of you. Okay? And I'm gonna see this seat here. I'm gonna keep this seat here for you. Okay? We don't really wanna see you back for at least 4 years. We wanna see you at our family-centered stuff where you come as a
Yeah.
family. And
Yes.
then with some time, don't worry, that we got a big board table. We got a big table here for you. We got
Yeah.
space. We're waiting for you here.
Yeah,
Does that sound right to
absolutely.
you?
Yeah, oh, 100%. I mean, it makes sense because, you know, like you said, you want some sense of control because you have lost all control. And it makes sense that, you're trying to fill a hole, in your heart. You're trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense. You're trying to find purpose and meaning in the most awful thing happening in your life. And I get that. I was there 100%. And I wonder what I might have missed with Avery and Lily at such a young age when I was pouring myself into this foundation. And everything I read had to do with loss and NICU. And it was all I thought about. And it was like, putting my energy there instead of putting my energy here inside me, making sure that my husband and I were okay because we were not okay. Um, Making sure that I'm, showing up 100% for my children. And I think there's also that, I mean, I've talked about this a lot in the past too, that with the loss of Zoe, I'd already felt like a failure in so many ways, right? I couldn't get pregnant by myself. I couldn't stay pregnant. Couldn't protect Zoe from dying. So I'm going to parent her and make sure she leaves this legacy, right? And I remember sitting in one of I had this wonderful, amazing grief counselor. It was through a church. She had been a PICU nurse who had often been assigned to the children that were terminal. So she had spent a lot of time with families very much like mine. She herself had had multiple miscarriages. It was like she was delivered to me on a silver platter. I mean, I could not have asked for a better grief counselor. But in talking about this with her at that time, she said, "Keira, that's not your job to leave Zoe's legacy." At the time, I thought, "You are crazy, lady. I am not coming back to talk to you." I was so offended that she would tell me that. And when she said, "Zoe doesn't need you anymore." And again, I was like, "Lady, you are insane. What are you talking about? Of course my child needs me." Of course, we talked about this more, and definitely in hindsight and, many years past, she was exactly right. And she said, "There will be people that you will meet that will be completely changed when they hear what you've been through. There are other people that will be touched and then they'll go on about their lives. And then there are other people that, it will mean absolutely nothing to them." And she said, "And it's not your job to make everybody, change who they are because of what you experienced." She said, you know, "Zoe is perfect. Zoe is absolutely fine." I mean, I am a Christian and I do believe that she is in heaven and that she has a perfectly whole and healthy heavenly body. That is my belief. And and she was right because I was attaching my, I guess, my worth, my love to this organization, right? That if I could do this, if I could achieve this goal, that would prove that I was a good mom. And you can't attach your love or your worth to a thing, to an organization. And so over time, I absolutely now it's very different. I used to, put everything out there that I was feeling all the time. I would, now it's much more personal for me. You know, it was like I was trying to show, "Look, I'm a good mom even though my child died," right? But now it's just me loving her is enough. That's all. Nothing more.
Yeah. It's courage. It's a lot of courage because our world doesn't give our mothers, our families that space. And so I think that's quite profound. And it's true. You are enough as you are.
Absolutely.
Hey, I
Absolutely.
had a great conversation with another mother just recently at a birthday party, which was not where I usually have my NICU conversations, but that's my life. That's what happens. I'm almost always wearing this. And and she said the same thing. I felt so, I'm a failure. And to this day, the kids are older. I'm a failure. I couldn't have a baby. I couldn't have a full term. Look at this body. Couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't. Well, why do you say that? And she sort of tried to giggle it off, like she didn't really mean it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like a failure, ha ha ha, which tells me that's how you feel, but you're not supposed to say it. And if you say it, then it's wrong, but laugh and oh my gosh, so much judgment, judgment, judgment. And I said, well, to me, and this is what I know, same thing for you in that same judgment, which I also practice, everybody out there, everything that I say outside, I also have to practice to listen to myself, right?
Right.
Is I know that if you could have done something different, you would have, which means it's not your fault because if you could have changed, right? For me, if I could have not had this ridiculous uterus that contracted and looked like I was in labor starting at like 16 weeks every week or twice a week, like I would have done that. I would have done that, right? Like for darn sure, especially the folks who are showing up in this way and having these deep feelings. Yeah. If you
Yeah.
if you could have, you would have. So that makes it no matter it's out of your hands. Um, yeah. Wow. I'm very grateful for that grief counselor you had.
Mm, me too. My
Thank
gosh.
you for sharing that wisdom.
Yeah.
Wow. So you created the first foundation, and then did that morph into what NICU Parent Network became?
So the first foundation was the Zoe Rose Memorial Foundation. It was a small nonprofit outside of Atlanta. Our goal was to help families who are transitioning home with babies with medical equipment because we felt completely lost when we left the NICU with 3 babies and all these machines.
It's a full unit, practically.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And because of that, I started to meet people and was invited to, an advocacy meeting in Washington, DC. Now it's the National Coalition for Infant Health.
Oh, yeah.
Before, it was called the what was it called? I can't even remember what it was called, but it was this coalition has been through about, 3 different iterations, so I believe the one that I went to was the 2nd iteration. It was run by then, Healthy Mothers, Healthy Babies, National Healthy Mothers, Healthy Babies, and I was in this room with about 60 people, and, there were people from the AAP and NAN and AWAN and HRSA and NPA and, all these provider associations, and I was one of 3 parents in the room.
Well,
And they were talking about, creating a NICU journal for families. They were talking about creating um, a discharge planning tool to help nurses teach families and have them ready for discharge.
yeah.
But they did not have families on their planning committees. They did not have families on their development committees. And I just sat there thinking, how do you know that what you're spending all this time and money on is actually going to work? How do you know it's going to help? And it was unbelievable to me.
Mhm.
Um, this was about 15 years ago. So I ended up having a conversation with the then executive director of Healthy Mothers, Healthy Babies, and said, "Hey, what do you think about a parent advisory board for this coalition?" And she pretty much said, "Great idea. Go ahead and do it." I was like, "Oh,
Oh,
okay."
that's the best.
Right. No, thankfully, I had a very good relationship with an advocacy director at a pharma company. And so I brought the idea to them and I said, I would love to get these parents together that are, leading programs, leading organizations, because they were this company at the time was trying to help develop, maternal infant health kind of coalitions around the country
Mhm,
with parents involved.
mhm.
What a novel idea. Um, and, um, and they said, "Great, I love that idea." So, it was probably the fastest grant I've ever received and then put on an actual event. I think we got the grant in July, we had the event in October. It's never happened that
Wow.
quick since.
My goodness.
Um, and yeah, and again, like I said, this was before, a lot of social media. And so it was really kind of, okay, searching the web, like what other organizations are out there for NICU parents, for preemie parents. And
Mhm,
so it was bringing it was inviting these parents to this meeting really to just kind of see what would happen.
mhm,
I mean, I
mhm.
honestly didn't have any clear objectives. And I remember talking to my husband ahead of time going, okay, this is either going to go really well if people want to collaborate and talk to one another, or it's going to go really awful if people, just want to hold their cards to their vest, and not share best practices and that kind of thing. Thankfully, everybody was very energized being together because it's just like when you meet another NICU parent or another bereaved parent and they just get you, right?
Yeah.
It was the same, but in a different level because not only did they understand the personal experience, they understood what you were trying to do from an advocacy standpoint, from a support standpoint. It was connecting with another leader. Um,
Mhm,
and so that was kind of how it started. We officially launched in 2012 with 6 support organization members. All of those members are the original are still members today, and I actually realized I need to update my bio because we have 56 member organizations now across the country.
wow.
Yeah, and it was bringing them together to create a collective voice for
Mhm,
NICU families and bereaved
mhm.
families so that we could partner with these provider associations and we could partner with researchers to make sure that the parent perspective is a part of what they're doing, to make
Yeah,
sure that what they're doing is the most effective it can possibly be. It's
yeah.
also to create this network and professional development because very few of our members have a background in nonprofit management or, community organizing. I think we have a couple out of 56. But most
Right,
of these parents are coming from completely different careers. And then they're
right.
starting a nonprofit, which is starting a business. Um,
Yeah. Well,
it's
that's what
it's
I forgot
very
to
rare.
mention in your bio
Yeah,
was
yeah.
the start of the NPN podcast to support organizations
Yes, exactly. Yes,
just like
we're
this. It's amazing.
yes, just like this, and it is specifically for those who have lived experience and are now, wanting to be advocates and lead programs, lead organizations to help other families.
So, I think something that I've seen, change, I think we've been I don't know, I should have looked this up before coming here. I think we've been members for 5, 6, 7, I don't know, something like that, years,
Ye Yes,
um,
yep.
and maybe more than one hand, a number of years, and I've seen a great change, and especially this past summer, which I've alluded to before on other, podcasts to episodes rather, was doing Hill Day with you all and getting into the
Mhm.
advocacy.
Yeah.
Um, I would be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about the NICU Baby Bill of Rights here. So share a little bit about that for those who don't know.
For sure. So this is actually our very first collaborative project as a network in 2013. So we launched in 2012, and at the summit that year, it was, "What if we create a NICU baby's Bill of Rights?" And, kind of akin to a patient's Bill of Rights. So we've been through several updates as, practices have changed, as language has evolved, and so our most recent, update came in 2024, and it is written as if the baby is speaking to their care team about all the different ways to support them and support their families. We have the right to inclusion, the right to my parents' care, the right to protected sleep, um, and all of these are, um, you know, again, they're written in a way to teach healthcare professionals how to best support the baby, and it's all grounded in those core tenets of family-centered care: collaboration, participation, respect and dignity, information sharing. I mean, that's what all of those are, and we were really fortunate earlier this year to have Congressman McGarvey in Kentucky and Congresswoman Houchin in Indiana to actually, file House Resolution 236, which is support for the goals of a NICU baby's Bill of Rights. Again, pointing to the importance of parental mental health, parent integration and participation at the bedside, informed consent. Um, it's really, I mean, never in my wildest dreams did I think that our Bill of Rights would actually make it to Congress. So we are hoping that next year it will be introduced on the floor for a vote.
Mhm.
Um, Time will tell, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's exactly what our Hill Day was all about, was educating um, the staffers of congressmen, congresswomen, and senators about what it's like, because very few people actually know what the NICU is
Right.
and what that means in terms of what's happening to these parents, and how they can best be supported.
Hmm. Yeah. I know for us, we were set in all of our Florida House offices and Senate offices, and then anybody we saw in the hallway. We picked up Ohio also because we just happened to be there. Uh, they were incredibly receptive,
Mm,
incredibly connected, and these are young, mostly male staffers. And it's summer, so it was also we had a bunch of summer interns and a lot of offices. They brought them in as well for a big meeting so they could learn, and it became really like a family meeting in each of the offices for us. When we were
yeah,
sitting there, they'd bring in other people. We'd talk about their what they knew about it, what they didn't know, how they could, and it was really something that they were like, "Well, why isn't this happening?" You know,
right,
um, and that's a good reception to have for trying to get something across the board is like, I thought this already would be true. It's a less of a stretch for them to agree to do it. So we are also in firm support and hoping that this will move forward and bringing more local officials in um, to what we do because we need them to support the different initiatives that we're doing, whether it be getting a family to the NICU, being able to, move these things forward. So it's, I think a lot of folks maybe some people go into NICU support not thinking so much about this side of the advocacy, but it's crucial. It's the upstream effect. So,
yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important for those that go into this work, um, either as a leader of a program or an organization, you're director of something, program coordinator of something, or even, as a peer mentor, you have a platform. You have an opportunity to take the experiences of the families that you're supporting and advocate for best practices,
Mhm.
for improved policies, improved guidelines. and it's perfectly fine if you wanna stay in your support lane 100%. You know, I know that my lane is not support. My lane is advocacy, right? And that's where I'm staying. But, if you do kind of have that, "Oh, this might I didn't know I could do that." That is something that we wanna help build up next year as we are preparing for another Hill Day in the spring. I don't know the dates yet, but, we are gonna develop kind of a more tailored advocacy training
Mhm.
for our what we call NICU parent leaders, and so that's
Mhm.
that's anybody who is in any sort of leadership position.
Mhm.
It's not just the executive directors or the CEOs or the presidents. This is
Mhm.
for anybody that's in a leadership position that wants to use their voice.
Yeah. I think it's, going back to families who are in the NICU now who have that energy, that want to make a difference, who want their experience
Mhm.
to for them, it may feel like it gives them a purpose or it helps them to heal, um, is you do have a voice. You don't have to use it unless you want to. And and it can be just talking because we like I said earlier, we need everybody. We need everybody like you at the top advocating to Congress and the White House, and we need everybody working in the middle who are talking to their doctors, being part of the Family Advisory Committee. We need people who are going to come back because that takes a lot. It's a different set of skills to come back to mentor a family. And then we also need you to take care of your babies, right? We need everybody, even if that's your jam, I'm going to do this and I'm going to talk to the people in my grocery store or in my play group about what it's like. I'm gonna be with my baby and going to school with them as their assistant, their aide. We need that too. We need all of us, and there's no one right way to do this as a parent, right? And, um, so if you have that energy, know that there is this parent organization, the NPN. There's everything from, your local hospital all the way up to a national organization, um, That that's here for you as a parent in the NICU.
Absolutely. That's one thing that I said at that very first summit in 2010 was that there is no single organization, no single person that can do it all and do it well for all the families who need help in all the ways that they need help. But by
Yes.
working together, we're going to be much more effective. And that's exactly what you're saying, that this is, from every aspect, every person or company or organization that has anything to do with these babies and these families. We need everybody. The problem is just too complex and too big.
Yeah. Well, I could talk to you for the rest of my life, clearly. I we're missing like 7 to 8 things that we didn't get to. We'll have you for a second iteration.
Yeah.
It'll be the Keira Sorrells Corner. So it is, those folks who are listening to us in the near proximity to when this goes live, it is November, which is World Prematurity Month, which is a very special month. It is World Prematurity Day, November 17th, today. It is also ICU Baby's 10th birthday. This was the first day that we delivered our first pack to our first NICU
Happy
family.
birthday. That is
Thank you.
wonderful.
We're double digits. Um,
Yes.
so it is a very special day, and I actually can't quite believe because we've gone back and forth about what day you're gonna come on here, that it is today,
Yeah.
World
I
Prematurity
know.
Day.
Very,
It's a very
very,
powerful day.
it is. Absolutely. It really is. And I think one thing that I don't know that a lot of people know is that World Prematurity Day was established by a parent organization. It is now the Global Foundation for the Care of Newborn Infants. At the time, it was the European
Yes.
Foundation for the Care of Newborn Infants, but they established World Prematurity Day, and I think that that's pretty amazing and really does speak to the influence and the power of parents that,
Yes,
they established this day years ago, and it is celebrated all over the world.
it is. It's incredible, truly incredible. So, I think, as we wrap up, we use the word hope. It's very important for, our way of being. What does hope, that word hope, mean to you?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot, because I know I've been in a lot of rooms before where healthcare professionals worry about giving hope, inspiring hope for families because they can't say what an outcome is going to be. But I think something that I've learned about hope is that it doesn't matter what the outcome is, that hope is to me, hope is an expression of love,
Hmm.
right? And regardless of what the outcome is. I mean, I had a pregnancy that ended up with the best possible outcome with Avery and Lily thriving as emerging young adults, and the worst possible outcome that I lost one of my daughters.
Yeah.
But what, what continues to move me forward is hope, which is fueled by my love for my children.
Mm, that's beautiful. And so if there you have currently, there's somebody sitting by their baby's bedside. There's somebody who's at home, they're driving to the hospital. Any uh, words of wisdom or um, encouragement or something that you would share with someone today?
Absolutely. I think one of the most important things that was told to me by a nurse was that my baby knows my smell, my voice, and my touch. That my touch is very different from the touch of a doctor or a nurse. And don't be afraid to touch your babies. Don't be afraid to hold your babies because it is healing. Being close to you, your scent, your voice, it's powerful. And so rest in that power and that knowing.
Amen to that. That is beautiful. Well, thank you, Kira, for joining us today and lending your story and to your girls, all of them, for sharing you with us. And if you're out there, maybe at your baby's bedside right now, or driving back and forth to the hospital, pacing at night, pumping milk, recovering after the NICU, and trying to make sense of the world, or maybe it's been 15, 20 years and those memories are still very fresh and raw. Kira and I want you to know that you are not alone, and we look forward to being in your ears or on your screen soon. Take gentle care, everyone.